So we keep making this script better and better. Let's go another step further. Now that we are saying we can turn off any light that we want using any key that we want, that's pretty flexible. But it still only relates to lights. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to turn on or off any component using this same script? Instead of saying public light target, I'm going to say public game object. We're working with a game object here instead of a component. Now we are talking about not turning off the components under a game object, but turning off the entire object itself, which in this case will work with our flashlight, and I think the added flexibility is worth it. Is it the same code here? The question is, do game objects have a property called enabled or not? And they don't have a public property called enabled. This wouldn't work. So now that target is a game object, not a component or not a light, how do we do this? If I come back over to Unity and look at my spotlight, this is what we're trying to do, is turn on and off this spotlight, but the enabled property won't work. Let's turn the light back on. We're going to leave that on all the time, and then we're going to use the game object itself to turn it on and off. So let's start with it being off, and then in code we got to figure out how that works, because the .enabled doesn't work for the game object, because that property doesn't exist for game objects. What does exist? We can say target.setActive, but this time it's not a property, it's a method, so I'm using parentheses after it. And with a method, I can send it values. So I'm not going to set it equal to true, I'm going to send it the value of true. Similarly, we can send it the value of false to turn it off, to make it inactive. And same for the code down here. I'm just going to copy this line of code, paste it here, copy this line of code, paste it here. We can't say if target.enabled here either. So instead, we can check the target.activeSelf. This is a property of a game object that has a value of true or false, whether it's active or not. And so if it is active here, we're telling it to go to false, make it not active anymore. And if it's not active, then it sets it to true. Let's run this and see how it goes. If I press F now, I have an error. It says the variable named target doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to press escape and stop this. Let's look at our FPS controller and scroll down to that script. So it says type mismatch target. It says it doesn't exist anymore, and that's because it's disabled here. So if it's not active, then we can't use it over here. That's a problem. We better turn that back on for a moment and click back on FPS controller, scroll down, and let's see if we can drag the spotlight object into that spot. If I press run, it'll be automatically on, and if I press F, it goes off. If I press F again, it comes back on. The only problem here is it's not starting in the state that we want it to be in. Let's go back to the code. Now this is where we could use the start method to say, let's have it start being turned off. So I'm going to set the target here to be false. If I save this now, run it. Okay, so the light is off right now, and if I press F, the light comes on. Press F again, it goes off. I'm going to press escape and stop. Let's go to the FPS controller script and let's check on the only while key down. I want to make sure that code is still working as well. And press run again. If I press F and hold it down, the light comes on. If I let go, it turns off. So both parts of that script are working. I'm going to stop this for a moment. I'm going to go to the spotlight so it's selected. And we just want to make sure we know what's happening here. When I press run, notice it turned off the spotlight object, but the light component is still on. As soon as I hold down F, it turns back on, and as soon as I let go of the F, it turns back off. But it's the game object that's being turned on and off, not the component. Press escape and stop, get the code back up. The last thing that I want to do here is clean up the code a little bit. The first thing here is these two if statements. They only have one command inside the block. And that's a fine way to write it. A lot of programmers always use curly braces when they're writing an if statement. But for me, I like it is down here a little better. If there's only one statement that's part of the if statement, you don't need the curly braces. So I'm going to get rid of that so that it's all on one line of code. And then another if statement, getting rid of that curly brace. So it just makes it feel a little more concise. Another thing that I could do, and it's very commonly done in programming to avoid this if-else statement, is to say let it equal whatever it's not. Right? Because that's all we're doing here. We're saying if it's true, make it false, and if it's false, make it true. Well, a quicker way to do that without having to have a condition is to say target.setActive, so we're going to set it to whatever it's not. So we can use the exclamation point, which is the not, and say target.activeSelf. So if it's true, it's going to send it the value of false. If it's false, it's going to send it the value of true, because it's using that not operator. So now we don't need this conditional statement. So this is a pretty concise script that has a lot of power now. Let's save it and go back to Unity. I'll double check it one last time. If I run it, getting no errors, that's good. If I hold down the F key, I got my light. I can still move around. It's kind of hard to move around when I'm holding the F key down, so maybe I could change it from the F key to some other key, maybe the space bar or something. Or in this case, what I'm going to do is uncheck the only while key down. Run this again, press F, I can run around all I want, look up and look down. If I press F again, the light goes off. Congratulations! You now have an idea of how to write versatile code.